Remain faithful to your idea. Tonight we have the fifth and last lesson in this course. First, I should give you a sort of summary of what has gone before. Then, since so many of you have asked me to elaborate further on lesson 3, I shall give you a few more ideas on thinking fourth dimensionally. I know that when a man sees a thing clearly, he can tell it. He can explain it. This past winter in Barbados, a fisherman whose vocabulary would not encompass 1,000 words told me more in 5 minutes about the behavior of the dolphin than Shakespeare, with his vast vocabulary, could have told them if he did not know the habit of the dolphin. This fisherman told me how the dolphin loves to play on a piece of driftwood. And in order to catch him, you throw the wood out and bait him as you would bait children, because he likes to pretend he is getting out of the water. As I said, this man's vocabulary was very limited, but he knew his fish and he knew the sea. Because he knew his dolphin, he could tell me all about their habits and how to catch them. When you say you know a thing, but you cannot explain it, I say you do not know it, for when you really know it, you naturally express it. If I should ask you now to define prayer and say to you, how would you, through prayer, go about realizing an objective, any objective? If you can tell me, then you know it. But if you cannot tell me, then you do not know it. When you see it clearly in the mind's eye, the greater you will inspire the words which are necessary to clothe the idea and express it beautifully. And you'll express the idea far better than a man with a vast vocabulary who does not see it as clearly as you do. If you have listened carefully throughout the past 4 days, you know now that the Bible has no reference at all to any persons that ever existed or to any events that ever occurred upon earth. The authors of the Bible were not writing history. They were writing a great drama of the mind which they dressed up in the garb of history and then adapted it to the limited capacity of the uncritical, unthinking masses. You know that every story in the Bible is your story. That when the writers introduce dozens of characters in the same story, they're trying to present you with different attributes of the mind that you may employ. You saw it as I took perhaps a dozen or more stories and interpreted them for you. For instance, many people wonder how Jesus, the most gracious, the most loving man in the world, if he be man, could say to his mother what he is supposed to have said to her as recorded in the 2nd chapter of the Gospel of St. John. Jesus is made to say to his mother, "Woman, what have I to do with thee?" You and I, who are not yet identified with the ideal we serve, would not make such a statement to our mother. Yet here was the embodiment of love saying to his mother, "Woman, what have I to do with thee? You are Jesus, and your mother is your own consciousness. For consciousness is the cause of all. Therefore, it is the great Father, Mother of all phenomena." You and I are creatures of habit. We get into the habit of accepting as final the evidence of our senses. Wine is needed for the guests, and my senses tell me that there is no wine, and I through habit am about to accept this lack as final. But I remember that my consciousness is the one and only reality. Therefore, if I deny the evidence of my senses and assume the consciousness of having sufficient wine, I have, in a sense, rebuked my mother or the consciousness which suggested lack. And by assuming the consciousness of having what I desire for my guests, wine is produced in a way we do not know. I'll just read a note here from a dear friend of mine in the audience. Last Sunday, he had an appointment at a church for a wedding. The clock told him he was late. Everything told him he was late. He was standing on a street corner waiting for a streetcar. There was none in sight. He imagined that instead of being on the street corner, that he was in the church. At that moment, a car stopped in front of him. My friend told the driver of his predicament. And the driver said to him, "I am not going that way, but I will take you there." My friend got into the car and was at the church in time for the service. That is applying the law correctly. Non-acceptance of the suggestion of lateness. Never accept the suggestion of lag. In this case, I say to myself, what have I to do with thee? What have I to do with the evidence of my senses? Bring me all the pots and fill them. In other words, I assume that I have wine and all that I desire. Then my dimensionally greater self inspires in all the thoughts and the actions which aid the embodiment of my assumption. It is not a man saying to a mother, "Woman, what have I to do with thee?" It is every man who knows this law who will say to himself, when his senses suggest lack, "What have I to do with it? Get behind me." I will never again listen to a voice like that, because if I do, then I am impregnated by that suggestion, and I will bear the fruit of lack. We turn to another story in the Gospel of St. Mark, where Jesus is hungry. And seeing a fig tree afar off, having leaves, he came, if haply he might find anything thereon. And when he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for the time of figs was not yet. And Jesus answered and said unto it, "No man eat fruit of thee hereafter forever." And his disciples heard it. And in the morning, as they passed by, they saw the fig tree dried up from the roots. What tree am I blasting? Not a tree on the outside. It is my own consciousness. I am the vine. My consciousness, my I amness, is the great tree. And habit once more suggests emptiness. It suggests barrenness. It suggests 4 months before I can feast. But I cannot wait 4 months. I give myself this powerful suggestion that never again will I even for a moment relieve that it will take 4 months to realize my desire. The belief in lack must from this day on be barren and never again reproduce itself in my mind. It is not a man blasting a tree. Everything in the Bible takes place in the mind of man. The tree, the city, the people, everything. There is not a statement made in the Bible that does not represent some attribute of the human mind. They're all personifications of the mind and not things within the world. Consciousness is the one and only reality. There is no one to whom we can turn after we discover that our own awareness is God. For God is the cause of all, and there is nothing but God. You cannot say that a devil causes some things and God others. Listen to these words. Thus saith the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I held holden, to subdue nations before him. And I will loose the loins of kings, to open before him the 2-leaved gates, and the gates shall not be shut. I will go before thee, and make the crooked places straight. I will break in pieces the gates of brass, and cut in sunder the bars of iron. And I will give thee the treasures of darkness, and hidden riches of secret places, that thou mayest know that I, the Lord, which called thee by thy name, am the God of Israel. I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. I have made the earth and created man upon it. I, even my hands, have stretched out the heavens, and all their hosts have I commanded. I have raised him up in righteousness, and I will direct all his ways. He shall build my city, and he shall let go my captives, not for price nor reward, saith the Lord of hosts. I am the Lord, and there is none else. There is no God beside me. Read these words carefully. They are not my words. They are the inspired words of men who discover that consciousness is the only reality. If I am hurt, I am self-hurt. If there is darkness in my world, I created the darkness and the gloom and the depression. If there is light and joy, I created the light and the joy.